Good morning. It's 9 o'clock. Let's get this meeting underway. We would like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, Jeremy. Okay, at this time, I will be swearing in the county board members that ran on the ballot. So I'm going to step down here, and if all of you would stand up that has a piece of paper in front of you, you can line up here if you like. Appreciate that. Okay. Okay, please raise your right hand. And you're going to repeat after me. When I say I state your name, you're going to state your name. And then when I say state your district, you're going to state your district. Okay, so let's get started. I state your name. Have been elected to the office of county board in the blank district of Lee County, in the county of Lee and state of Illinois. Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Illinois, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Lee County, whatever your district is. And congratulations. If you could sign your paper. Congratulations. Congratulations. I'm not sick. I need your pen. Thank you. I do. Thanks, Nancy. Thank you. And just so everybody knows, Allie Huss and Mike Pearson were unable to attend the meeting today, so I did swear them in on Wednesday, so they are able to vote. Also, Tim Bivens is on Zoom, and he's also able to vote. He was unable to be here today. Okay, so going down the agenda, next is selection of the chair of the Lee County Board. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for nominations from the floor for the chairman of the board. Do I have a nomination? Mr. Kitson.
Nominate Bob Olson.
Do I have a second?
Second, Copine.
Okay, and then I will ask two more times. Is there any other nominations for chairman of the Lee County Board? Is there any nominations for chairman of the Lee County Board? Okay, so the only person I have that was nominated is Bob Olson by Kitson, second by Copine. And then this is done by roll call vote. And I will start with Acree.
Yes.
Bivens. Mr. Bivens? You're muted. Come back. Book?
Yes.
Friel?
Yes.
Gascoigne?
Yes.
Hudson?
Yes.
Huss?
Yes.
Kitson?
Yes.
Copine?
Yes.
Naylor? Yes. Pearson? Sheline? Shippert?
Yes.
Scrogstad?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Bivens?
Can't get the mute unmuted. He cannot get his mic unmuted.
Okay. So just carry on. So I have 14 yes for Bob Olson. So by unanimous decision, Bob Olson will be the next Lee County Chairman. Now we're on to the next item in the agenda, which is selection of the Vice Chair. Is there any nominations on the floor for Vice Chairman? Mr. Hudson?
Yes, I would like to nominate Tom Kitson, Vice Chairman.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Naylor? Okay, and is there anyone else that would like to nominate anyone to be Vice Chairman? And for the last time, is there anyone else that would like to nominate anyone for the Vice Chair? This also is done by roll call vote. Bivens?
Yes.
Book?
Yes.
Freel?
Yes.
Gascoigne?
Yes.
Hudson?
Yes.
Huss?
Yes.
Kitson? Sorry.
Yes. Abstain.
Copine?
Yes.
Naylor?
Yes.
Pearson? Sheline? Shippert?
Yes.
Scrogstad?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Zeman?
Yes.
Acree?
Yes.
It's 15 votes yes. Tom Kitson is the new vice chair for Lee County. So at this time, I'm going to announce that Bob Olson is the new county chairman. And would you like to step forward? Congratulations. And also congratulations to Tom Kitson for vice chair.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you for your vote of confidence, everybody, and let's get back to the county's work now. So we'll move on. Where are we at here? Board member assignments, Becky's got the sheet. I think she'll be passing around. I'll be here for a long time today. If there's any questions or issues or something you can't make, they're pretty much the same. We did some tweaking to it. I'm willing to change whatever we gotta make work to meet everybody's expectations and schedules. Give you a few minutes to look them over. There's questions or comments, I'll be here after the meeting. I seen that. Yeah. Yeah.
And I apologize, guys. I forgot to do roll call vote after I swore everybody in. So we'll go back to, this is just the roll call vote or roll call for members. Sorry, Mr. Acree,
Here.
Bivens,
Here.
Book,
Here.
Freel,
Here.
Gascoigne, Hudson,
Here.
Huss,
Here.
Kitson? Present.
Copine,
Here.
Naylor,
Present.
Pearson, Sheline, Shippert,
Here.
Scrogstad,
Here.
White,
Here.
Wilson,
Here.
Zeman.
Here.
Thank you.
I also want to congratulate everybody on their election too. I forgot to do that as well. So congratulations to everybody got reelected, and I think we got two, Charlie, where are we at with the two open seats right now? I think Nancy or
I think you're going to be looking for a nomination by the Republican Party for the vacant seat for Dallas. And then I believe you're going to be looking for both parties to give you a nomination for the other seat that Liam left vacant.
okay, and we'll get them out. I think we got 3 days to get them out, them letters, and they'll go out hopefully this afternoon. Becky shaking her head, yes. All right. Let's keep moving on. I'll be around after the meeting, like I said, on the assignments. Don't come on, talk to me in the office and we'll go through them. Charlie, you want to talk about the role of state's attorney? I would, so somebody could hear you better. Come on up here if you want.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Or is this work? Okay. Yep. All right, well, I'll keep this pretty brief because I think you're all pretty familiar with me. My role and my office's role as the state's attorney's office is to support you through any type of legal advice you may need, to give you recommendations in terms of if there's Open Meetings Act issues, if there's FOIA issues that come through, really just a supportive role. Stephanie is going to come up here pretty soon and give you a little bit more in-depth look at the Open Meetings Act. Maybe touch on the FOIA stuff. I'm not sure if she's going to hit that at all or not, but the Open Meetings Act stuff for sure. Our role is not to give you policy advice. We can help you on the legal side of things. It's certainly your prerogative to decide where the county's heading because you are the policymakers. So anything that you're looking for with that, I'm certainly happy to give you my own personal advice as a citizen, but when it comes to the state's attorney's office, we're just here to support you in any way we can when it comes to the legal workings. Anything I can help you with?
Why don't you touch on the judicial, executive, and legislative
Sure.
branch?
So the way that Lee County is set up, like all the other counties in Illinois, is that there is the division of the three branches, just like you would see across the federal government. So your branch, the legislative branch, is to make those policy decisions. I fall within the executive branch. The judicial branch, which you have Judge Ackert, Judge Klon, Judge Lee, and Judge Fields-Raper, they're on their own side of it as well. And you'll see some overlapping, but there's also going to be some division there as well when it comes to like probation department, the circuit clerk's office, which is where you see with the collective bargaining facet of it. So again, your side of it being the legislative side, again, our side is going to support you in terms of legal advice and looking over contracts and things that you guys will be passing along, resolutions and ordinances. But again, I try to stick as much as I can in my lane because that's your lane. I think that's a pretty good overview for you.
Yes, and so legislative are basically we policy, we have oversight, and we power the purse. Basically, would you not?
Correct. Yep.
Agree with that? Any questions? Thanks, Charlie.
Yep.
Stephanie?
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for making time to listen to me today. You have in front of you what we've already put together as just an Open Meetings Act and FOIA presentation, just general guidelines, how to follow these two laws that do govern everything that you do. So I will be very brief as we move through this. We did cover the same material last year. It's always good to have a solid reminder. So first, let's touch on the Open Meetings Act. This is a piece of legislation that governs every single public body. And it basically just lays out that all meetings, with very, very few exceptions, have to be open to the public, and there has to be advance notice of the meetings and the agenda that's going to be covered. Okay? Purpose of the Open Meetings Act is pretty straightforward. It's because you're elected officials. The whole point of it is to encourage transparency in government. The public needs to be able to observe any deliberations as well as have a voice in what's going on. As far as what qualifies as a meeting, it is any gathering of a majority of a quorum to discuss public business. So there's three different things there that we need to cover. And as we get further along, we'll cover that there are things that don't look like meetings that are in fact actual meetings governed by the OMA. So for quorums in the OMA, for committees and subcommittees of 3 members, a full quorum of 3 members is necessary for the meeting to fall under the OMA. And for the full county board, your quorum is 11 members. So a majority of the quorum is 6. So please, if you're in a committee of 3, don't be together unless you've properly noticed that meeting in. It's just always a safe guideline. I know we have to cover if we're meeting for the purpose of discussing public business, it's just easier to stay away from it. That way we never get to the question of if you're discussing public matters. Just from my office's perspective, it's a lot easier to handle things if we just don't go anywhere near what would appear to be a violation when we're dealing with smaller committees. A lot of it is optics. We're a small community. A lot of you know each other outside of this county board, so it wouldn't be unusual for 2 or 3 of you to, be in the same place or grab coffee or do something. However, we do have to keep our eye on the optics because you are elected officials. And then as a board, no more than 6 of you, and certainly not like 2 sets of 3 that are smaller committees. And then for the larger committees, it does apply the majority of the quorum, okay? Meeting logistics, open meetings must be held in an open area that's accessible to the public. They may be recorded. So the difference between must is you have to do it. May is permissive. We use those words intentionally. So your meetings absolutely have to be accessible to the public. They may be recorded, meaning you can record them, but you don't necessarily need to. It's best practice to record it. Again, it just helps. It helps to make sure that we maintain a clear, transparent record. Open meetings can address only the matters properly noticed to the agenda or properly noticed to the public in the published agenda. So please, as you go forward with your properly noticed meetings, you have to stay on topic with your agenda. I think all of us are very, very well practiced in doing that. If there's something that comes up outside of the confines of the agenda that potentially the board wants to address, please take time just to set that over to the next meeting so that the public can be properly noticed and they can have adequate participation in what's going on. So very, very brief do's and don'ts for the OMA. Please remember that it applies to you at all times. All right, stay aware of quorum guidelines before and after the meetings, as well as during intermissions, which can be tricky. Again, this is like when we are in a grand jury setting or in a jury setting and the judge has to tell them, don't think that, these attorneys are being rude and ignoring you in the hallway or not making eye contact. They're prevented from speaking to you, which is the rule. I would encourage you all, both before and after meetings and during intermissions, don't be afraid of, being like, oh, I'm not being rude to you. No, you're following the rules. Just avoid each other before and after meetings and during intermissions, because that's not part of the meeting. So it can be very, very easy to fall into a quorum violation during that time. And again, we do have that third threshold that we cross of, are we meeting for the matters or for the purpose of discussing public matters? It's very, very easy during a meeting setting, during an intermission, to allow those casual conversations to trend over into matters that you're supposed to be discussing during the meeting. Just try and avoid that as best as possible. During the meeting, stay on topic and stick to the agenda. Always, always, always ask our office if you have questions about the OMA. I, for one, am very, very happy to receive questions. It's always a good day for me when I get the question of, is this appropriate, as opposed to, how do we fix this? It's always easier to deal with those on the offensive rather than being defensive. I always encourage proactive question asking. Ask ahead of time. Ask before you do anything. It's substantially easier and so much happier for me to answer those questions in advance. No question is annoying. No question is bothersome. It's our function. It's what we do here. It's part of what our office is able to do for you, is answer those questions in advance so we avoid any problems later on. Don't participating in walking quorums. This can happen through text message threads, through emails, conference calls, those sorts of things. Quorum violations can happen in the electronic environment when we're dealing with things like group text threads, group email messages. If you CC all and somebody replies and all of a sudden you've got 15 board members on an email, congratulations, you've just violated the walking quorum prohibition. Don't gather outside of public meetings in numbers that would indicate the OMA. This is another big one. It's really, really fun to gather as a group, particularly in smaller communities. And I know that there are seminars and whatnot that are offered to the board. Quorum guidelines are still going to apply to you at all times in all places. Please do not gather in groups larger than what is appropriate unless that has been properly indicated. I know last year it came up that we had some board members who needed to get together to go to a site visit for something. And rather than take people in smaller groups, one of the options is you can just notice in a public meeting for that time and place. Say if you're going to look at a specific location for a topic that the board is going to address for whatever reason, and you want to bring, 10 board members, just notice it in. Don't address material or subject matter not included in the public agenda. That's been on here 3 times. It's because it's very, very important. Let's remember to stick to our agendas. All the matters that are going to be public business, the public has a right to notice so they can come and participate. And don't have impromptu or improperly noticed meetings. This again includes all forms of electronic communication and conference calls. Okay, there are very few circumstances under which impromptu meetings are going to be permissible. If that is the case and you feel like that needs to happen, that's fine. Just call our office and touch base first so that we make sure all of our bases are covered. Does anybody have any questions on the Open Meetings Act? I know we've been through this a lot of times and it's very much inherent in what you do. So we've covered it a lot over the years. But does anybody have any questions before we move on to FOIA? All right. So FOIA is the Freedom of Information Act. I put a full definition there on the first slide as far as what the Freedom of Information Act covers. This mandates public access to all public records. And the definition is right there. Public records include things that you wouldn't necessarily anticipate being public records, and the presumption is always in favor of disclosure. So please keep that in mind. There are a list of statutorily mandated exemptions from FOIA. That doesn't necessarily mean a record would be completely prohibited from disclosure to the public. It means that potentially we have to redact some things, but always be mindful of when you are creating a record. And the exhaustive list is right here. Things that you wouldn't necessarily anticipate being a record, absolutely become a record. The purpose of FOIA is, again, the same as the OMA. It's to encourage transparency in government. What we do here is I love local government. It's the closest that constituents get to the implementation of policy and the expenditure of their dollars is local government. This is where it hits closest. This is where it needs to be the most transparent. I think we've all had experiences with larger forms of government where we wish we could see more of what was going on. And we certainly have those avenues to reach it. But as far as what impacts people and voters in Lee County the most directly, it's what we do here in this room. So maintaining that aspect of absolute transparency is pretty cool. It's very empowering for the constituents. It's mandated by law, and it's fantastic for you all sitting here to enjoy the privilege of being tasked with the government of the county. So it's paramount that we maintain transparency. Again, what qualifies as a record, you can read through that on your own unless you want me to read aloud. I trust you to go through. I do. I trust you guys all to go through and read this independently and review if you have questions. And then when you have general questions, you can refer back to this very basic primer. So as far as the do's, do take FOIA seriously. I said this last year, I'll say it again this year. I have had instances where boards had to disclose all of their text messages because they were texting back and forth during a public meeting and they were texting about each other. That all became very, very public because somebody issued a FOIA request because on the Zoom meeting, they could see that they were texting. And because someone issued a request for what was going on during that meeting, if it touched on the public matter, because they had mentioned each other's names, all of it was disclosed. It was a huge deal. It was pretty embarrassing. And the lift in getting all that information collected and out to the public was burdensome for the office that was producing it. So keep all that in mind. Please take FOIA seriously. Understand that notes you take during open meetings are public records that are subject to FOIA. So if you're scratching on a piece of paper and you indicate one thing on here that's related to the meeting and you're taking notes, that's going to be a public record. And if someone asks for all notes taken during a board meeting, we are going to have to produce that. And that's just so as far as what you're retaining. If you're taking notes during a public meeting, I'm going to ask that you just retain it. If you take it on your tablet, that's a lot easier. Or if you want to write it down, it doesn't matter. Just retain it because it is a public record that we are going to have to produce should somebody ask for those things that are created during the meeting. Stay aware that communications recorded in any way that touch upon public business are public records subject to FOIA. This includes your phone. This includes your personal email. This includes handwritten notes during meetings. So just because, say you're emailing back and forth, but you're using your personal email to do it, that's still going to be accessible. You cannot insulate yourself from a FOIA disclosure by using a personal method of communication. So I would encourage all of you to use your county dedicated email addresses for communications with anything involving the county. And again, that's just so that the lift is easier when people request that information. It's a lot easier for our IT department to just pull those emails for you and then we can get them produced as opposed to needing to dive into any personal accounts. Plus, I don't think anybody here would raise their hand to volunteer for IT to dig through their personal email and their personal phones for information. It's just a lot better. It is best practice. Always use your county forms of communication that are dedicated for that purpose. Your email address is always ideal just because it's going to be in one place. And I do encourage people to communicate via county email as opposed to text message, even with one or two members, just because again, it silos it, it keeps it all in one place. It's a lot easier to address, and it's a lot easier to answer any response or any requests that come in. Do ask our question if you have, do ask our office any questions if you believe that the Open Meetings Act or FOIA may be indicated. So always, again, always ask. Just ask. It's okay. Don't use your cell phones during public meetings. We're on the don'ts now. Don't use your cell phones during public meetings. I say this constantly. It's very, very easy to keep your phone on that table. We're all used to doing it. It's easy to keep your phone in your pocket. We're used to having open communications all of the time. We're all very accustomed to being completely reachable. I'm encouraging you to not do that during public meetings. It's very simple, just to silence your phone, put it away. Again, one, it keeps the optics really, really nice and clean, because I don't have you guys on your phones during a public meeting where people can see you on your phones during public meeting and they're wondering what you're doing. It could be you're texting your grocery list, or you're texting your spouse. What do you want for dinner? You're trying to figure out childcare. You're planning something for next week. That's fine. But if somebody submits a FOIA request for what was going on during those phone calls, now you've got the burden of searching through all those, and it creates a body of work that doesn't need to exist. And it does mean that those records are going to be subject to review to determine if they are going to be necessarily disclosed under FOIA. So I encourage everybody, please do not use your cell phone during a public meeting, or during a closed session for that matter. Just no phones. Don't pass notes during public meetings. Don't get up and talk to each other during public meetings. I've seen that one happen, where we get over and we whisper to one person, or we're passing notes back and forth. Bad practice. Please don't do that. Don't create public records that you would feel uncomfortable disclosing pursuant to a FOIA request. Now, we have a saying in our industry, which is email like it's going to be read aloud during a deposition. Create a record like it's going to be disclosed under FOIA. Please stay mindful of that when you're taking notes, when you are having email conversations back and forth regarding county business. Create records like it's going to be subject to FOIA. If it's something that you are uncomfortable, if someone else is going to read it, or if it's going to be disclosed to a media outlet, maybe don't create that record, right? We have to stay mindful of what's going on in our role as county officials. And that's it. I would like to end on a do, but my personality is more towards don't do these things. Does anybody have any questions whatsoever? We just covered a lot of material very, very quickly. Yes.
So in the context of just etiquette within our county, let's say I want some information from one of the departments. Is it best to just email them and ask for it, or send a FOIA request? What's appropriate?
So it depends on the material you're asking for. FOIA requests don't have to come in any particular format. So keep in mind, like if someone stops a board member in a hallway and says, hey, I would like all this information, that qualifies as a FOIA request. They do not need to email you. They do not need to put it on a form. They can just ask you. It's always best to memorialize it in writing. As far as communicating with the departments in the county, that's going to be your comfort level and the best way you feel about reaching out for the communications. In my field, I'm always more comfortable with putting things in writing, just because it allows us to track what's being asked for and where that response is coming from. And that's to ensure that we can get you the information, or that department can get you the information that you need without any miscommunications. If it is something that's going to be subject to FOIA, yeah, absolutely submit that FOIA request. You can do that. And it's always, you can communicate with the department heads as to how do you prefer to receive FOIA requests? Would you like me to send an email? Do you have a form? Under state law, every department in the county has a designated FOIA officer, and their information is publicly posted as to how to submit that FOIA request, best practice. But there's no set in stone way. If you're seeking information from a department, absolutely, you can reach out to them, see the best way they want you to ask for it, or just submit a FOIA request and they'll coordinate.
I just want to jump in real quick here too. Keep in mind too, if you're asking for stuff as a board member, that's completely different than asking for stuff as a citizen too. So if you're doing so, make sure you're differentiating what you're doing it as, because otherwise we get in this issue of, we represent you in some ways, but we don't represent you as a citizen. So it's kind of murky at best when you do that. The best thing I think you can probably do is first touch base with that department head first to see if you can get it that way, if you're doing it on behalf as a county board member, because that way it's going to be a clearer scope as to what's being done. If there needs to be a FOIA with it, there needs to be a FOIA with it. But the department heads are going to need to know where they're getting it from. Are they getting it as somebody that's their policymaker in the county, or are they getting it from citizen Nancy Naylor? Just make it clear for them.
What if it's both? What if you want to know as a board member and as a citizen?
I think you just do it as the board member then, if it's
Okay.
going to fall within your purview.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Does anybody else have any questions? Yes.
Also, when you were going through the FOIA request, any conversation we have with Charlie or his assistants as in you is not FOIAble, correct?
That's correct. If you're coming to us seeking, I mean, you're typically going to be interacting with us. If you're asking us a question on how to proceed or something like that, that's legal advice. It's going to fall under attorney-client privilege.
Sure. I just wanted to bring.
Bear in mind, if there's a third party in the room who has nothing to do with that communication, you've now dissolved your privilege. So keep that in mind as well. That's one of our guidelines that we operate by just in our industry. If attorney-client privilege applies when the attorney and client are in the room. There are a few exceptions to that. But say you bring your buddy along and then I have this person in the room who has got nothing to do with it and you're asking us a question as far as legal advice is concerned, if that person is in the room hearing it, the privilege is dissolved. So please keep that in mind. Yes.
What's an appropriate follow-up if someone says, I understand, I think under FOIA that the response time is like 5 days or something
Mhm.
like that. What's an appropriate response if someone says, I can't do that because I don't have time?
So under FOIA, there are specific guidelines. It's 5 business days for date of response. If whoever is producing that record believes it's going to take longer just because of the volume of the request or the work involved in redacting the information or reviewing the information, they'll communicate with you in 5 days and they'll give you a general estimate as to how many days are required to fill that. Every FOIA officer in the county goes through mandatory annual FOIA and OMA training. They'll know that. So if you submit your FOIA request and it's going to take longer than 5 days, you'll receive a communication indicating how many days are projected that are required to fill that request.
Mhm. Is there any end to that?
Those are all very case specific questions.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, if you ask for an incredibly voluminous amount of information and it is unrealistic to produce that amount of information, you'll get a response telling you that this is far too broad. You need to narrow down what you're asking for, so they can respond in a reasonable amount of time. And that's permissible under the law. It can't be so vague as to be you want every record from this department ever created. That's not ever going to happen. So yeah, FOIA requests will be tailored. But again, every department has an officer who's trained specifically to deal with those and work with you to get, I know I get a lot of FOIA requests that are very broad. So it's a simple phone call or follow-up email to be like, hey, this looks broad. Let's nail down what it is you're looking for so I can help you.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Anybody else? All right. Thank you so much for giving me a little bit of your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephanie. A lot of good information. Thank you. We'll move down. He just walked in the door to the row of board members. Mr. Jim Sheeline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just follow up kind of on the, have a little bit of a discussion in regards to, as we are elected officials, what is our true role in county government? We get into, the information, got just discussion on the information flow between the department heads and us as board members. But what is our true role as far as our duties as elected officials? There's a big difference, and I think this is the main thing that I want to get across. There's a huge difference between day-to-day and policy. Day-to-day, and I want to use the example of as a board member, I want to see a particular job done in Road and Bridge. And I want Dave Anderson to do that. Is it appropriate for me to go to David Anderson and say, David, I have an idea of a project and I'd really like to see you get that done? Well, it kind of depends, doesn't it? How are you asking the question? How are you bringing that idea to bear? It's one thing to say as part of as the budget process, Mr. Anderson, that I have a project on Pump Factory Road that needs to be done. Is that part of his budget? Is that going to be something that he had already had planned? we have to be really careful as board members, whether we're getting into the day-to-day functions of our department heads and as policy as board members. Policy in that example, I think, has to do more. You have to do a step back. And what areas of that highway budget needs to see attention? I have an area over in the county that hasn't seen any attention in some time. You know, can you work with that, with Dave Anderson, to see that that gets done over a period of time within his budget? So we have to be very careful. We have to be very careful in regards to a lot of things in regards to let's say with Jeremy. Jeremy's responsible for personnel decisions. We have to be extremely careful in personnel issues with department heads. We can have discussions over department needs, but do we get into the actual personnel issues that are within a department head's purview? We have to be very, very careful. So I guess that is, if there's questions, and I really, when Bob and I talked about this, I really want to have a dialogue rather than, you know, getting into, you know, the actual me using a lot of different examples, but we have to make sure that we stay in our role as policymakers, not getting into the day-to-day decision-making process of our department heads. So
Exactly. You know, we're committee based, bring it up a committee, start at the committee. We always do when they come to me, I always ask, did you go to the committee? Did you walk it through the committee? And it's chain of command. That's how we work and that's how it's done.
the committee process is extraordinarily important for us, especially, you know, a lot of people will watch our board meetings and they'll say, my God, you're done in half an hour. Well, it's because what they don't see is the hours that it takes to build from the agenda of the committees, putting that agenda together, getting everything put together, then have the committee meeting, then go to executive, then by the time it gets to the full board meeting, it does become pretty much perfunctory because it's gone through this entire screening process to get to the board. Now, that's not to say if there's questions at a board meeting, you shouldn't ask questions. Obviously, questions should be asked. But the real down and dirty meat of what we do is at the committee level, when we got to keep that in mind as well.
And I think at committees, we try to get all the information that's relevant to the project or whatever it is, so we can make good informed decisions. And if we don't, then we table it and we go back to the board and bring it up. So we got a good board. We got 20 good people. This is enjoyable. So anybody else have any? Tom?
Just, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just as a reminder, there's an outstanding training coming up with UCCI on the 27th of January that is remarkable on what a county board member does, the do's, the don'ts. And it's very, very good training. I asked them to bring it back out. Years ago, they used to do it in regional things. They did it in Dixon. I don't think they're going to make it this year to do it, but if anybody's interested in going down there, it is a wonderful training. So,
Anybody have anything else? Yes.
I was just wondering if we have a copy of the org structure, if we could pull up, because I had a couple questions about that.
Work structure.
Yeah, I believe it's in the onboard. I'm not exactly where, maybe under home. There's a picture of like the different departments in the county board, and
Oh, yes.
it's not quite that.
Like a flow chart?
Yeah, maybe flow chart might be the right word.
Not there. It's on our website. There you go.
what you wanted to see?
It looked a little different because there was like judicial kind of off to the side.
I think you want the departments involved in this flow chart, correct?
You right. Whichever one. I don't know the name of it.
It's on our website if you go to it. The board. Play some music.
I can't see it well, but that was not the one I'm referring to.
Is it the Lee County organizational chart, just for reference? Is that what we're looking at here?
No, we're looking for the flow, I think, of departments, which departments report to which committees, I think is what she's looking for.
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, did you go to government information? And then Lee County organizational chart?
Yeah, we're in government here. Let's see.
Go to information.
There it is. Good call, Ally.
Yes. Thank you, Ally. Knows our website well.
Yes. I don't know if this is fairly accurate. I think Charlie's got some different opinions on here, but
So I guess that's a good question for Charlie. In what ways might your opinion differ?
Okay, so I think Bob is referring to is, so the way that it's kind of outlined here is it shows the county board, elected, appointed, executive committee, I don't know what the R is there for, then county administrator. So when it branches off, while there are certain departments that are going to be reporting for the finance portion of this to certain committees, if you look at public safety or county services, zoning, my office, whatever it may be. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that when you have offices like the sheriff's office, my office, circuit clerk, coroner, those elected officials are not reporting to the county board in terms of what their work is. They're not reporting to them as though it's an employee relationship. It is more of just the control of the finances, that portion. So I think that's what I was referring to.
Could you speak more to the green section at my top left and, how we would interact with that group?
So it is going to vary wildly across the board here. So like the Board of Health, they have their own board, and basically all you guys are going to be controlling is the levy. The circuit court, when it comes to the judges, probation, public defender, there's very little interaction there in terms of the court. Again, it's its own branch. It's going to do what its own branch is going to do. And you're, again, just responsible for some of the financial portions of that.
it's very limited.
Yeah.
what we're responsible. We're responsible to fund them, but we're very limited on what we can require.
Can you speak to the Board of Health specifically? I thought that under our rules that we had originally at some point voted to create a Board of Health or not create a Board of Health.
I don't know how it was created, but that was before my time.
Yeah, before my time too. We approved the appointment of the
Yeah, you have
board.
one seat there.
Well, we also approved the board. No, we don't. No, you're right. Katie's our liaison to them.
My question is, do we grant the Board of Public Health their authority by voting to have that department? Or does that department exist by law?
It exists by law and it falls underneath the Illinois Department of Public Health.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, I think those are the questions I have. Thank you.
Yep.
Any more questions or comments? I think we took care of everything. I'd look for a motion to adjourn. Ms. Naylor moves. Mr. Wilson seconds it. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. I'll be around, so if you got questions on assignments or anything, look me up.